You never say what you actually mean. Not fully. Not cleanly. There's always a version, a slightly softer, slightly safer version, that comes out instead. And you've become so good at it that you don't even notice the gap anymore. The gap between what you feel and what you say. Between what you want and what you allow. You smile. You agree. You adjust. You smooth things over before they even become things. And everyone thinks you're the easy one to be around. But here's what no one says out loud. Easy to be around is not the same as known. And somewhere, quietly, you already know that. Think about the last time someone asked your opinion on something, a restaurant, a decision, a plan, and you genuinely didn't care either way. Now think about the last time someone asked and you did care. You had a preference, a real one. What did you do with it? Did you say it clearly? Or did you soften it first? Did you frame it as a question? Did you say, I mean, either works for me, and then quietly hope they'd pick the thing you actually wanted? That habit, that specific habit, that's what we're talking about today. Because it didn't start as a habit. It started as a solution. At some point, probably earlier than you can clearly remember, you were in an environment where having preferences felt dangerous, where expressing what you wanted made the room heavier, where disagreeing meant losing something: approval, safety, love, peace. So you learned to read the room before you entered it. You learned to sense what was needed from you and become that. You learned that the fastest way to feel safe was to make yourself easy. That was smart. At the time, that was genuinely intelligent survival. The problem is, you're still doing it. In rooms that are completely safe. With people who would actually welcome the real you. And you can't stop, because you've been doing it so long that you're no longer sure where the performance ends and you begin. In your relationships, the people closest to you have a version of you that is not entirely real. They have the version you've been curating. The one who doesn't push back too hard, who says, I'm fine, when asked and means it just enough that they don't dig deeper. The one who adapts to their moods so smoothly that they've never had to adapt to yours. And this creates a very particular kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone. The loneliness of being surrounded by people who think they know you and knowing they don't. Not because they failed, because you never let them. The relationships you have are real, but they're built on a slightly edited version of who you are. Which means when someone says, I love you, there's a part of you that hears, you love who I've let you see. That doubt doesn't go away with more compliments. It goes away when you let someone see the unedited version and they stay. But you haven't tried that yet, because it feels too risky. And that's the trap. In your decisions, there are choices you've made, careers, living situations, relationships, commitments, that were not entirely yours. Not because someone forced you, but because you are so well trained in anticipating what other people want that you sometimes choose it before they even ask. You take the job that sounds impressive to your family. You stay in the city that keeps a certain peace. You don't send the message, make the change, or have the conversation, not because you don't want to, but because somewhere in the calculation, their reaction got more weight than your desire. And then you wonder why your life feels a little bit like it was designed for someone else. It was. You designed it for the version of yourself that other people are comfortable with. In your self-worth. Here's the part that cuts the deepest. When your sense of self is built around being liked, being easy, being agreeable, your self-worth becomes entirely dependent on how people respond to you. A good interaction, and you feel fine. A moment where someone seems cold, distant, or unimpressed, and something in you immediately asks, what did I do wrong? How do I fix this? What do they need from me right now? You are constantly monitoring the emotional temperature of the room and adjusting yourself to regulate it. And you've been doing this so long that it doesn't even feel like effort anymore. It just feels like being you. But it is exhausting. And you know it's exhausting. Because you're tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. There's a name for what happened to you. It's called fawn response. It sits alongside fight, flight, and freeze, but it gets talked about far less because it doesn't look like a trauma response. It looks like being a nice person. When a nervous system learns early on that conflict is dangerous, it develops a reflex: appease. Make yourself useful. Make yourself agreeable. Smooth the edges off your personality until you don't cause friction. And unlike fight or flight, which are obvious, which other people can see, fawning is invisible. It passes as politeness, as maturity, as emotional intelligence. So no one ever tells you to stop. They thank you for it. They call you easy to work with, low maintenance, a breath of fresh air. And every time someone says that, the reflex gets reinforced. Agreeable equals safe. Safe equals loved. The psychological term for what keeps it running is called negative reinforcement. Not punishment, reinforcement. Every time you adjust yourself and the tension dissolves, your brain learns, that worked. Do it again. Over thousands of iterations, across years, across every relationship you've ever had. It becomes automatic. It becomes identity. And then one day you're sitting somewhere, and someone asks you what you want. A genuinely simple question, and you go blank. Not because you're indecisive, because you've spent so long prioritizing everyone else's wants that your own have become faint. Like a frequency you used to hear and now can barely tune into. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you told someone something true about yourself? Something you actually wanted? Something you actually feared? Something that wasn't softened or adjusted or framed for easy digestion? And let them respond without controlling the outcome. When was the last time you held a boundary and let the other person be uncomfortable with it? When was the last time you said no and didn't immediately follow it with an explanation, an apology, or an alternative that made it easier for them to hear? Because the agreeable person doesn't just lose themselves. They train the people around them to expect a version of them that doesn't fully exist. And then when you finally, try to be honest, try to have a preference, try to hold a line, the people in your life don't know how to receive it. They push back. They seem confused. Or worse, they seem hurt. And that reaction confirms your original fear. That being real is too risky. That people only love the easy version. So you fold again. You smooth it over. You go back. That's not a relationship dynamic. That's a cage. And you built it yourself, bar by bar, with every small adjustment, every swallowed preference, every time you said, "I'm fine," and weren't. The question is not whether you can see this. You can. You're seeing it right now. The question is what you're going to do with what you see. This isn't a video that ends with steps, or affirmations, or a challenge to be more authentic this week. That's not how this works. A reflex built over decades doesn't dissolve in a week. But here's what's true. You are not broken. You are adapted. And the thing that adapted you, that relentless social awareness, that ability to read a room, that instinct for what people need, that is real skill. It kept you safe. It made you good at things. It gave you an understanding of human dynamics that most people never develop. The goal is not to destroy that. The goal is to stop letting it run your entire personality. There's a difference between choosing to be agreeable because you genuinely don't mind, because the relationship matters, because this moment isn't worth the friction, and reflexively agreeing because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. One is flexibility. The other is fear wearing flexibility's clothes. Start small, not with the hardest conversation, not with the biggest boundary. Start by noticing, just noticing, the moment right before you adjust yourself. The small pause where you have a thought, and then you decide to change it before it leaves your mouth. Don't change anything yet. Just notice it. Name it. Let yourself see how often it happens. Because the first step isn't speaking differently. The first step is becoming honest about how much you've been speaking from fear. And that is uncomfortable. But it's the only discomfort that actually leads somewhere. If something in this video felt uncomfortably familiar, that recognition isn't an accident. That's what this channel exists for. Cerevity Aura is not here to make you feel better. It's here to make you see clearer. And sometimes those two things are the same, but not always. If that's the kind of content you want more of, the kind that doesn't look away, subscribe. Not because it's the polite thing to do at the end of a video, but because you're someone who would rather know than be comfortable. And that's already different from most people.